Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 78 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Elan Marko today. Elan is on a mission to help ADHD entrepreneurs consistently accomplish their goals faster, to beat procrastination, perfectionism, and stress that gets in the way. His coaching company, Deep Work Sprints, harnesses ADHD superpowers so that entrepreneurs have more fun, flow, and finances. Welcome to the show, Elan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really good to talk. We exchanged emails a while ago and really keen to hear a bit more about your own journey, but also about what you do with Deep Work Sprints. So let's start with your own journey with being diagnosed and learning a bit more about your brain.
Oh man, diagnosis, I feel like there's a life before, life after moment of figuring that out. To rewind the clock, essentially, I had a business coach, and during COVID, that business coach at one point said to me, "Hey, Elan, do you think you have ADHD?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I have ADHD." They're like, "No, do you actually know if you have ADHD?" I'm like, "Well, I haven't been diagnosed, but my whole life I've pretty much thought I've had it." She's like, "The reason I ask is because if you have ADHD, then these challenges we've been coming up against over and over again, we should look at them in a different light than a typical coaching client." And she goes, "Well, it might be something for you worth exploring." She sends me a link, and I don't remember which link she sent me at this point, but thank God she sent me this link. And I read this story, and the story I read was of someone's life with ADHD. And as soon as I read it, I was like, I'm reading my autobiography. Like I'm reading my story, even though it was someone else's story. And it was like, oh, okay. And I really had challenges in COVID, and it was a hard time for me. And it was a hard time for a lot of people, in particular for those with ADHD. There was a huge spike in diagnosis. There's lots of reasons why, which we can get into. But essentially, I went through the process of seeking help. And in that process, they're like, yeah, you should go get diagnosed for ADHD. That was from my GP. I went to a psychiatrist that could diagnose it and went through the testing, got diagnosed. Essentially, I'm sitting there with a diagnosis, and it's like, okay, so now what do I do? Their only thing was medication and maybe go look up some websites around it. So essentially, it was a diagnosis with no manual. Once I got diagnosed, it was like this really interesting moment because now I could sort of explain my whole history up until that, like all sorts of challenges that I've gone through. It was this life before, life after moment, I call it, because then I went down the rabbit hole in true ADHD hyperfocus fashion of trying to devour everything I could on ADHD. And that's when it led into my first ADHD entrepreneur study because I wanted to hear it from entrepreneurs. That study led me to just completely transition my business coaching practice I'd been doing for business coaching / consulting for a decade. I realized most of my clients had ADHD, whether they knew it or not. Like some knew it and some didn't. But regardless, the clients I was working with, they had, and so I got really obsessed and curious about this. And that led me, after that study that I did with about 35 entrepreneurs with ADHD, it made it really glaringly, obviously clear. This is where my passion is. This is where my life purpose is. And I want to build the world leading company at the intersection of ADHD and entrepreneurship. And so that's what I've been on the mission for. And that's what we're waking up every day to help entrepreneurs accomplish their goals faster, using ADHD as a huge strength and superpower, and figuring out how do we remove those kryptonite, those weaknesses that are holding us back. And what's cool is, as I'm working with others and as I'm studying it, I keep learning more things that I can use myself as well, including really great apps like Focus Bear and technology that can help us remove some of the vices that we have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I like the idea of the life before and the life after. Do you mind talking a bit more about the life before in terms of some of the challenges that you were working through with your coach prior to diagnosis?
Yeah. So this story goes obviously way back earlier, because it didn't just start in adulthood. I had it my whole life, and I wanted to get diagnosed in university. I'm 38 years old as of 2024. When I got to university, I couldn't sit down and study for long periods. Give me a project, I can dig into a project. Give me teamwork, I can do team. Like, there's certain things I could do and I can just go all out. But have me read a textbook, I would go to the library, and after 20, 30 minutes, my feet are jumping around. I feel like I'm in a straitjacket. And, I look around and I'm like, why does everyone look so peaceful? Why does everyone look so zen? And I'm like, okay, I got to go. And I go for a break, and I come back later, like an hour later, and everyone's still in the exact same spot. I do one more of those 30-minute sessions. I leave, and like everyone looks great. I come back late at night, same people, same positions. And I'm like, what the heck? And so it's kind of wild. I was going to get diagnosed at that point. I went to student services, and unfortunately, student services told me the only thing I could do with the diagnosis is get medication. They didn't tell me there's all sorts of strategies. There's so many things that could be helpful. And so unfortunately, because it was going to cost me like $2 or $3 grand to get diagnosed, I was paying my way through university. I was like, okay, screw this. I've gone this far without a diagnosis. I'll just continue life as is. So that was like 20 years ago. And so now, 20 years later, in COVID, I was struggling. Like, I'm a normally highly energetic person. I have tons of passions and hobbies and very social. And like, for the first time, I didn't have that spark and I wasn't motivated. It was a weird time. I didn't realize that there were a bunch of supports that were really helping me before COVID, like being active every day and being around friends and other entrepreneurs and sharing ideas, otherwise known as vitamin C, vitamin connect. So I wasn't getting that. Essentially, through the process of eventually diagnosis, I started to be able to figure these things out. But the things I was struggling with was around energy management. It was around productivity. I was like going to sleep. My sleep was off. I was procrastinating all sorts of stuff. I was like going in circles with like having a project, but then having a tangent of an idea and then running off onto the tangent idea. And before that idea gets finished, I came up with like 3 other ideas. So, really, I've been learning how to take ideas and take them to the finish line. And that's what I help people do now. And it's funny because it's actually easier for me to do for other people than for myself, because there's zero emotional like, I could see everything so clearly when I'm working with people. I could see all the combinations, all the pathways. And that's the really neat part about ADHD or neurodivergence, is the ability to see so many clear pathways. But then for yourself, now you've got unlimited pathways that you can see, and that then becomes overwhelming. So I've had to come up with systems in place to be able to clarify and commit to certain pathways and move them to the end. Yeah.
Before you go into those systems, I'm keen to hear about the study that you mentioned earlier with the 35 entrepreneurs. What were some of the things you learned from that?
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. So the first study was great. So the first study, 35 entrepreneurs, each entrepreneur, 1 to 2 hours of conversation, probably 400 pages of notes. It was wild. My whole entire wall was filled with text in size like 7 font. And I just went wild, highlighting all over the commonalities and amongst like 60 different questions. And so there were some really interesting things. So one was around diagnosis. So for those that got diagnosed, I asked them, like, was it helpful? 100% of people said it was helpful. Okay. So That's great. And like, why was it helpful? And so the common answers around why it was helpful was it helped them normalize the experience. It helped them understand their past and make sense of it without as much judgment. It helped with comparisonitis, like just like comparing themselves to other people in terms of how much progress they've made in one area or another. So there's a lot of self-acceptance that came from or a journey of self-acceptance that emerged as the diagnosis came. But again, the diagnosis with no manual was like a commonality amongst all the, especially adults that were in the group that got diagnosed as adults later in life. And there were so many things. There were the most common, deepest struggles that entrepreneurs face, feeling like they're not meeting their potential, leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table in missed opportunities from not following through on certain things, lost relationships because of their ADHD. So that being like losing business partners, losing romantic partners, friendships, like catastrophic breaks in certain relationships that have happened. And what was interesting is almost all of them, especially I'm dealing with adults. And later there was study two where I essentially did ultra successful multimillionaire entrepreneurs and compared them and contrasted. And they all had catastrophic failures that led to really profound, deep learning moments in their life where they became aware of specific challenge and issue that they had and weakness and a real commitment to putting kind of like those, what do you call it when you go bowling and they put those they like make the laneways so that you can't get in the gutters,
The bumpers.
the bumpers. So almost all of them, they would speak, especially the highly successful ones, they'd gone through catastrophic failure and now they've set up some of those bumper rails so that they'll never get the ball in the gutter. And that was really neat. What more? Oh man, I could do a whole presentation for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second study definitely even further with the like comparing the differences between the ultra successful and the more earlier stage. And I found that one really fascinating. So that one then was really helpful because for the past year and a half from study one, the biggest insight. Sorry, I forgot to share the biggest one. The biggest one was when I asked the people the question, if you were to be consistently doing the thing you know you need to do each week, how likely are you to achieve your big goals? And the answer was 100%. Okay, so how likely are you to achieve your big goals if you followed through with what you know you need to do every week? 100%. Now, people didn't just say 100%. So this is what's interesting. They didn't say 100% when I asked them. They said 100%. Oh my God, if I did everything that I knew I needed to do in the week, like that was important, like the 1, 2, 3 things that were really important, I would be like a multimillionaire by now. Oh my God, I would have like this business would have been at this place. I would have been. It's almost like every entrepreneur had some sort of story where they wanted to convince me that they would be in this like completely different destination had they just done exactly what they knew they needed to do but didn't do. So then that became the mission for the last year and a half. That was the mission. Okay, well, if everyone is saying consistency, consistency, consistency on the most important things they know they need to do, I'm going to build my entire program around making sure people can consistently hit the most important thing. And that's been my only mission. And then I still, though, had this like deep feeling in my gut that there were two people in the first study that were multimillionaire serial entrepreneurs. And it was a different conversation with those people. I couldn't tell you and put my finger precisely, but I knew that they were different conversations. And that gnawed away at me. And basically, after a year, I was like, okay, I need to go back and now get more people and compare more of the multimillionaire serial entrepreneurs and compare those to the earlier stage ones and see, okay, well, what is the difference? Because I'd like to be able to accelerate the learnings. And a lot of the questions were around what experiences taught you the most, but what experiences that people have invested in or taking time in that was useless. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. So even for example, how many of them have gotten like professional support? Most of them have sought some sort of professional support to help them with the challenges, but only 1/3 of them found it helpful. And that I found interesting because they were all very like driven, motivated, looking for solutions. And so my question was, why wasn't it helpful for the 2/3? Like, why wasn't it helpful, those 2/3? And for them, so the treatment that they sought, let's say it was like therapy or coaching, either felt too clinical or not personalized enough. And we sort of know this with therapy. One of the most important factors of someone seeing success with their therapist is that they trust their therapist or whatnot. They connect with them. So they think that the therapist cares. So anyways, I thought that was really sad. I know there's a lot of really great therapists. I've met a lot of ADHD specialized therapists and a lot of therapists that work with our divergent community. But I think that's like an area of opportunity for the whole community that's supporting neurodivergent to move towards meeting people, like really understanding the audience and connecting with them on a humanistic level, which is more important for, let's say, for ADHDers, there's a lot of defiance, like needing it to do my own way. And I need to be really into it because there needs to be dopamine in this whole experience. So I think the typical clinical experience just isn't built for like fun and empowerment. And it's more of a clinical approach. So anyways, for those that are listening, there are lots of people. And all I'm saying is try to find someone you connect with and don't write off any support that's out there. Like just try to keep going till you find someone you connect with, because the ones that did connect with their provider, support professional, they found someone amazing, and it's life-changing when they do. So the ones that do find support that's really helpful, it ends up being life-changing, like certain concepts that all of a sudden people grasp, and it changes the way they do things. So I do suggest find someone to be in your corner and then work it.
Absolutely. And going back to what your business does, Deep Work Sprints, what type of entrepreneurs do you help and what areas?
I want to say all sorts of entrepreneurs, but it's not true. I work a lot with solopreneurs, people who are either some sort of consultant, coach, speaker, but I also work with mainly like earlier stage entrepreneurs, like up to 10, 20 employees. I would love to work with more entrepreneurs that are further along, but there's something about that early stage that I really love. I just got off a call a couple hours ago with a client who it's interesting. So they're making the transition from, they're working as a salesperson at the company, just like the company they want to start. So my job, our first month, was to get them incredibly consistent with doing all the sales work that they were doing there. In month one, we've gotten them completely to hit all their target, everything that they're doing. So they have all the capabilities to now feel confident that they can go do it on their own and build their own agency like this company. And so as of today, right after the call, literally he went to go land his first personal clients on the side. So he's someone who's actually working at a business and now he's moving towards building his own company as he learns how to do it. And it's exciting to me as he's driving and he's sending me a photo of the first company he walked into to do customer discovery. So anyways, I get really excited around any type of early stage business, but I'd say definitely the people who see the fastest results are people who have been in business for many years. So they have lots of skills and they're just bumping up their head, like they've hit a ceiling of some sort. And all we got to do is like aim things more properly, figure out how to remove some things from their environment or from their work or whatnot, simplify a whole bunch, and then get really clear on what is their formula to performing really well. Because the cool thing is people with ADHD can perform incredibly well when put in the right environment. Yeah. And I sort of use this story. There's this great story about this monk who 20 years ago, he was living in New York City. He was a therapist and he went to therapy to look for how he can be more social. He was introverted, and in New York City, he wanted to be more comfortable. So now 20 years later, he's been a monk for 15 years meditating. And what he wished the therapist would have asked him was, what is my nature? And the reason he said he wished the therapist would have asked, he's like, because if I was like a rose, let's say I'm a rose and I'm planted in the desert in Utah, or you're in the other side of the world, and so you're desert in Australia, right? Australia or New Zealand?
Australia.
Australia. Okay. I don't want to be the ignorant one there. But yeah, imagine you're a rose in the desert in Australia. Well, in order for that rose to grow, you're going to have to build a greenhouse, bring in some water. You're going to have to bring in maybe some new soil, do all sorts of stuff. That's really hard. It's a lot of work. But if you know that your nature, you're a rose, go plant yourself in a rose garden and voila, like you will flower, right? Like, so what is your nature? And if we look at the neurodivergent community, like, man, such amazing skills. But what is the environment? We know we're very responsive to stimulus. So how can we put ourselves in the right environment where you'll just flower because that is your nature. That's why I even recommend for things like your focus bear, the app blockers, because that's part of creating the environment that allows someone to succeed. And if someone wants to go from where they are, especially as a business, if you want to go like 10 times what you're currently doing, if you want to get to a completely new possibility, you're going to have to let go of some things, like some ways of being that are just not helping you get there. And so even myself, I have to use an app blocker and even more on top of that. But it's like I have to take the keys away from myself to perform. Yeah.
Yeah, keen to hear a bit more about the other productivity tips that you'd give, because and maybe start with the question of, is consistency possible? Because I've interviewed quite a few people who say that we just need to accept that the ADHD brain is not consistent and just ride the highs of hyperfocus and don't worry about it on the days after that when you're a bit flat and you don't achieve very much. What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, I would say there's a difference between performing every single day. Like, I think that's not achievable. But the question is, are you able to consistently perform each week, like at a different time scale? And so that to me is what's important. That's why I've set up our system that we put the entrepreneurs through. Yes, we have some bigger achieving goals that we're working to, let's say, months out from now, but we break it down to each week a 7-day sprint. So each week there's a very clear, most important things that need to get pushed through. You're not going to be perfect through every hour of every day or through every day. But the question is, did you manage to hit those top 3 things over the course of 7 days? And that's my like initial core focus with people, is figuring out how can we make sure we're ultra clear on the most impactful 3 things that we're going to finish this week. Make sure we have a very clear plan around them. So we've thought through all the executive functional elements of it, like what's included, what's involved. Everything is crystal clear. We know what's in it, but then there's also strategies around what's going to actually help you do this stuff better. So for example, a client a few weeks ago, he wanted to do he needed to get some more sales in through the door. I like finding very unique ways that work for this person. Now, they're not consistently doing sales amazingly, but when I look back at their past, when have they done these like incredible bursts of sales? It's always been when they're doing like some road trip and they're doing sales phone calls, like while they're driving or this, that. Set up a 48-hour sales blitz road trip for him. And this is what he like set up for himself. He brought in like $42,000 or $47,000 in a matter of 48 hours, came back home. His wife was super happy. She was upset he left, but when he came back with more money, he was a hero. And so it's like looking for these uniquely, oddly specific ways and environments that allow you to consistently perform. So if we know we're consistently inconsistent, let's look for the commonalities. And that's my job, is to figure out, let's look and find the ways where you have performed and build more of those opportunities. And a lot gets easier once you clear up. There's a lot of clutter. There's a lot of things slowing people down, de-energizing them. So a lot of creating that perfect environment, like what's my nature, is getting clear on what is their role, what can we delegate, what can we remove, taking a look at all those things, and then getting really clear. A lot of the times people get really drained when they're stuck, when they get nervous around something, when they want it to be perfect, when they can't make a decision. There's like different elements that really like stops people dead in their tracks. In some ways, if someone's working really hard and then they get to the finish and then they need a day or two to recover, like in some senses, okay, that's cool if that got you there and they enjoyed it. But if it's harming them, then we've got to find better workarounds for how to minimize the burnout from it.
Would that sort of situation where someone burns out, is that as a result of applying productivity techniques that might work for a neurotypical person and trying to use it for them, and it requires so much willpower that they end up being exhausted?
Is this a personal challenge of yours, the burnout?
It has been in the past, and
yeah,
I think that has been one of the causes for me, that I've tried to adopt approaches in terms of mainly not taking breaks and not prioritizing self-care. I've recognized that for me, I really need to start the day with exercise, and I need to be willing to take breaks during the day. I can't just work through.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So this is what happens with people that have like incredible strengths that come with weaknesses is you hit some sort of burnout period that forced you, unfortunately, to be like, oh, this is terrible. I have no energy. This is sustainable, etc. And you probably had to stumble into that more than once, is my guess. Like most people don't learn the lesson the first time. Like most people, it's you got to get hit with it many, many times. And this is me, myself included, right? So I've got to learn it. And then eventually at some point it's like, oh man, I can't, not again. And you find your way and you start to create those guardrails for yourself. So that's why I like creating for people as we work together, we create their operating manual. Like what's your operating manual for you? So we know what is the right level of, it's not about just like operating more hours. And it's interesting because so my wife she has a startup right now and they're developing it's really cool. It's for menstrual mental health. But we were just having a conversation the other night and she's like, I just got to work harder. So I heard the same thing that I see a lot of people go to: work harder, work more hours. And yeah, if you're the Elon Musk and that's like who you're going for, like lifestyle wise, go that way. All the more power to you. For me, I like other parts of life. I like having family balance. I like spending time with my daughter. I like going and surfing or rock climbing. Or I have a lot of other things that I like to do. And I think those are important to find some level of balance. So everyone's got a different level of balance and a different level of breaks. So I'm glad you found it. You found what's the right amount for you. And it's going to change for people in different seasons of life. But certain seasons of life, maybe you are going like crazy, working hard, all these hours. And another season of life, you're going to want to take more time off. People have different priorities. What are people prioritizing? But in my opinion, I'm with you. I think no matter what, and I can tell you this, when you talk about exercise every day, guess what? When I interviewed the ultra successful, the serial entrepreneurs, the multimillionaires, guess what they do every day? Exercise. Don't miss a day. All of them with ADHD, they exercise every single day. In fact, some of them, they're like, yeah, if I haven't worked out that day, my wife will kick me out of the house and tell me, get out and go exercise because I'm pissing her off. And so the point is that we know exercise is incredibly good for our bodies, incredibly good for our brain. It's good. It's good for everyone going through depression, or even if you're feeling great, no matter who you are, it's good for. And I don't think any doctor will ever say, hey, exercise is not a good thing for you, unless there's some sort of pre-existing condition of some sort. So yeah, and I actually recently, I'm running an experiment right now called Unstoppable 75. Have you heard of 75 Hard?
I haven't.
No. Okay. So it's like this really insane hard challenge for 75 days. You got to work out twice a day for 75 days, along with all sorts of other things, cutting out alcohol, picking a diet, blah, blah, blah. And I looked into it and I know a bunch of people have done it. And it's been really transformational for them. And they're essentially learning self-discipline, which is something very hard for the ADHDer. So I have, in true ADHD fashion, I've got to customize this thing and find a way to adapt it. And so I'm right now testing with myself and a dozen other people, and we've created this Unstoppable 75. So everyone finding their own unstoppable formula, of which one of the things people must do every single day is exercise. Another one is finding some solo time to think, whether it's journal, meditate, go for a walk. There's some other stuff as well. But point is like that exercise thing you're talking about, it's just such an important part of de-stressing, emotional regulation, etc. Same thing with sleep. People don't prioritize sleep, but if you sleep less than 7 hours, you're going to start having deficits. It's going to start impacting things. Everyone's different, but everyone needs a certain amount of sleep. And I feel like that one's a very hard one to change. Sleep habits are very, very, very.
You've just convinced me now that I need to absolutely take a break right now and do some squats. So we'll be back with you in a minute after an exercise break.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
Right, we're back. I did some squats. Elan drank some water.
I did some push-ups.
Yep, nice. We're walking the talk. Now, keen to hear about your morning routine. What do you do the first thing when you start the day?
First thing in the morning is I go meditate. I've actually, oh, one sec. I've got my meditation timer. I got one of these visual timers. For anyone who doesn't, have you seen, you've seen these? Do you use
Yeah,
them? Yeah, these
I
visual
did get
timers are
one and
great.
I gave it to my wife. She loves it.
Yeah. So, oh, it might beep at some point. Anyway, so I meditate and do a short meditation of like Vipassana style. So it depends on the day. So some days I do early morning sprints. I do a 2 hour long sprint. I call them co-working sprints. In our coaching community, we've got people who join in for body doubling. So entrepreneurs, when they've got tasks that are either incredibly boring or need courage, I usually direct them to do those tasks during co-working time. So then, yeah, I'll do 2 hours of that. If it's a co-working day, then I've got my daughter. She's 2.5 right now, and I take her to school. Now, what I've done, and this has been amazing, this has been a highlight of my year, has been I commute my daughter via bike. I bike her there. So instead of driving, and oh, game changer. So it's 20 minutes. I carry her. I have a backpack carrier. So she's like on my back. She's practically hugging me. It's like I have created an environment where I get a 20-minute hug all the way to school. It's so cute. And we just talk and chat and whatever. And to me, it's like such a huge it's like when I get my exercise in, because it's 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. I get time with my daughter. She gets to see about being active. There's just so much that happens. And even though I work from home, I have a commute, which is a great thing. And then anyway, so then I come back home and I do a shower. I'm right now as part of this Unstoppable 75. One of the things is doing something uncomfortable. So I do a cold exposure at the end of the shower, or sometimes the beginning or entire shower. And then I get to work. And so I structure my days. So I have different days have different focuses. So certain days are like, okay, these are my client coaching days. And the other days are like my business building days, like the days I'm actually working on pushing through ideas, projects, etc. And then I use like what Y Combinator has for make your time, manage your time. So like in the mornings, I work on like anything that I need to work on solo, I work on in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, like if I have meetings or anything like that, those will be slotted for the afternoons. Because like I can be in a meeting at any time. Here right now, it's 7 o'clock my time in the evening. I normally shut off work around 4:30, but I could do this all honestly. Like I could hang out with you all night long. Like it's easy, but doing like paper, any sort of admin or project or writing or whatever that I need to do, I could not do that right now. Like I am checked out by the time like 1 o'clock hits in terms of that kind of work.
Yeah. Okay. And then from when you check out from work, how do you switch off? Do you rock climbing and things like that in the evening?
Yeah, depending on the day. So some days I'm picking up my daughter, then it's great. I've got this thing to look forward to. I go pick her up, bring her back home, and then I'm in like family life stuff. So it's just things that need to happen to run the household, eating, cleaning, organizing, bath time, routine, etc. And then by about 9 o'clock, my daughter goes down, which is late. I wish I could go to bed earlier. And then now, as part of this Unstoppable 75, I'm not allowed watching Netflix, which is my vice, watching things. So actually, I've earned myself a lot of extra sleep hours because I don't do that anymore. So essentially, like a little hangout with my wife or a little bit of reading or music, it depends. And the last thing I do before I head to the bedroom is I make my plan for the next day. This has been something I struggled with my whole life, like having a plan. And once I, got diagnosed, and one of the things I recognized was, oh, okay, the days I perform really well are the days I come in with a plan the day before. And there's just something about that. And so that's what I've been implementing. This is mine for today. So I have my own thing that just helps me. I work between this and my calendar. And then I know when I'm going to, like when I leave this here in my office, I leave my bedroom, I leave my phone in my office and I go to my bedroom. I'm like completely checked out. I know my tomorrow, I know what's going to happen and I'm essentially ready to go to bed. Then falling asleep, that's another question. But actually recently, because I'm not on Netflix, which sounds funny, one of the things I've been doing, which has been really funny, is I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. But I had this idea about a month ago, because normally I'm listening at like, let's say 1.7 or something like that, 1.7. Depends on the book. It could go up higher or lower depending on the speed of the book. But I decided to slow it down. once I don't know why, but I'm like, I wonder what happens if I slow this down. I slowed it down to 1.2, and honestly, it like puts me to sleep the moment I slow it down. So then that's been a really good tactic to get me to fall asleep. I just put the sleep timer on.
Nice.
That's basically it.
We'll have to try
Obviously, I missed a few things like brushing my teeth and whatever, but they happen. I just didn't include it here.
that. We trust you. Your breath smells fine over Zoom.
I got Zoom breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To wrap things up, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so there's actually a few ways to connect. One is, so for example, if people want to learn more about what we're up to, best thing to do is to on the website, deepworksprints.com. So at deepworksprints.com, you can do a few things. One is if you're interested and if you're an entrepreneur and you're interested about ADHD and you want to be part of the ADHD studies that are ongoing, you can sign up for that. It's free. And essentially as part of being a participant in that, you then end up getting active. You get all the results from the study. So you can learn about where you are, how you stand relative to other entrepreneurs with ADHD, and get some insights for yourself. So deepworksprints.com for that. The second thing is for anyone who wants to be part of, let's say, a body doubling or co-working community with other entrepreneurs, then you can go there again, deepworksprints.com, the website, and that's a very accessible program. And then lastly is for people who, if they do want some sort of deeper coaching, like they want to go through a program, they want to build skills, and they just essentially want to accomplish the goals faster in a less painful way, then sign up for a session where we can just walk through what the program is like and learn more about your business and show you how we create those consistent results and work with you to make that happen over like the first 90-day period. That's the promise. And there's some real serious guarantees. So we like stand behind the process and the program. And yeah, so that's it. Basically go to deepworksprints.com. Otherwise, do find me on Instagram. I think it's ADHD Coach Elan. I don't use Instagram enough to fully.
It seems antithetical to deep work.
Yeah, I actually, that's the thing is I purposely have not allowed myself to go onto social media. Like it was something that I just don't really allow myself onto because it's a rabbit hole activity. So I've now slowly allowed myself to be on there more and more. Last year, I'd been on Instagram for a total of 10 minutes up until that point in my life. And this year I've probably spent 20 hours on it. That's it. Some people may have spent that in a day. That's on it. So, yeah.
And final question for you, Elan. Any final words or asks for the audience?
Yeah. Final words is if you've got neurodivergence, it's a huge superpower. It is something that is your greatest strength. So figure out what the strengths are that come with it, but also get really clear about what the weakness is, that kryptonite is, non-judgmentally. Don't be too hard on yourself. And hopefully find someone that can be in your corner, that can, in a non-judgmental way, just know what's going on for you and help support you. And the reason I say this is because, no one knows what's happening on those days where, you might be burnt out and on the couch and can't get up, or you have something, if you're a solopreneur or entrepreneur, no one knows if you're hitting your targets or not, whatever, you're the owner of that. But if you can bring the people into your life that can support you, like you're capable of obviously amazing things. You've done so much up until now. I just think it's fascinating. We're all heroes of our own stories. And so I think just keep on the adventure.
I love that. Keep being a hero. Thanks a lot for being on the podcast, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.